Welcome to the Up Your Average podcast, where Keith and Doug give no-nonsense advice to level up your life. So buckle up and listen closely to Up Your Average.
Welcome to another Up Your Average podcast. One of our key principles at Gimbal Financial is generosity wins. And it's hard to know from time to time which topics of life will be pressing on each week when we hang out with you all. But today I've invited my friend Trent Henderson to join me for a conversation about disaster relief and what that might mean to you. And as you look at it, disasters are mostly unpredictable and create opportunities for humanity to live their best lives. And what we've discovered is when others suffer, we have the possibility of sharing in their pain and offering encouragement through difficult times. My friend Trent is the pastor of Heritage Park Baptist Church in Webster, Texas. We've been friends for a few years now, I think probably 7. And before I kick it off with Trent, I want to just show you some of the involvement that Gimbal Financial has had with disasters in the past. We haven't done anything recently, but to give you an idea of our heart for helping people in desperate times, this was when we were out helping our friends in the Webster area. This is what Texans call a bayou, and we call them ditches in Indiana. But from my recall, this thing filled up with water, and not only filled up with water, but it overcame the whole neighborhood there. And so that's hard to imagine. You can see the debris scattered throughout this picture. The next picture is the house we were working on and some of our friends that were helping. And you can just see the yard was decimated, all the trash out in front. If you look across the street, you can see the second story windows are gone in this house. So this whole neighborhood was underwater. And we had the opportunity, not only with some of the resources from Gimbal, but from our resources of our friends that went with us on this particular trip to help the community. We did some disaster relief in Oklahoma. 2013, I think, is when this is. I think this was a Chevy. I don't even know what it was. It got tossed and turned by a tornado going across Tornado Alley. This next one this was a neighborhood that got decimated, and this is the Moore, Oklahoma area. If you go back and look at that, the tornado was just unbelievable, and this whole neighborhood was decimated, and they're laying foundations for new houses, and we were able to jump in on this one as well. I put this one in here to help you all think about the disruption of a disaster. This was somebody's house in Katrina. And if you happen to get hit by it, the things that you think are ordinary, that you don't even give a second thought to, those things are stacked on boxes and former cabinets. And this is what a house looks like when you go through those things. And they're just kind of heart-wrenching to see that. This was in Katrina. I was thicker back then. and this was, I can't think of the neighborhood. This was north of Lake Pontchartrain, and these were probably equivalent of $1 million plus houses. This is all their stuff piled up. Our truck got in a ditch here, and the stench of the floods from these kind of disasters is just overwhelming. And so when you think of a disaster and you think of what that looks like in the lives of people, it's really hard to know where somebody might be. And so I'm just really grateful that Trent took the time to jump in and chat with us today. How's your day going, Trent?
Keith, man, thank you so much for having me on, and greetings from way down south. My day's going fine, and we are praying certainly for the folks in the eastern part of the country who experienced some of the things that we experienced back in 2017 when you and I met.
Yeah, I want to throw up one more picture. I want to talk first of all about our time together and really what you learned through that. And this is my best representation of the Houston area. And so Webster is down near the Gulf there, and not too far from Galveston. And in my recall, that there were problems as far north as the Woodlands. Is that right?
That's about right. Yep.
And that's literally, according to this Google map, 55.6 miles. So it's probably close to 60 miles. And while we were there, we explored, I think I'm guessing, I don't know, is this one 610 or is this 610 here?
So 610 is the inner loop. And then you've got the one that's kind of light blue there is the outer loop. And we've since added one more outer loop.
I can see that one there.
So yeah, we got.
So I think I was roaming around somewhere in this area. So I saw flooding in that area. And my guess is that if this were Indianapolis would probably be encompassed by even 610. So for people to grasp the magnitude of that was Harvey, right?
That was Harvey.
Yeah, to grasp the magnitude of Harvey is just really mind-boggling to me. So let's go back to 2017. Your dad, the math of what did you have 4 children then?
Four kids then, yeah.
Okay, so Harvey is beating down on the Gulf. What are you doing as a dad, doing and thinking as Harvey's approaching?
So we had actually lived through another hurricane down here in 2008, Hurricane Ike. And our kind of general rule is Cat 2 or higher, we'll go ahead and get out of there. Cat 1, we'll probably just stick it out. And, I mean, no storm is ever anything to trifle with. It's pretty scary no matter what. But we just saw Harvey coming in as a tropical storm, and then hit hurricane strength. It landed there in the kind of Corpus Christi area, for those familiar with the coast of Texas. And then it started its weird thing where it bumped back out into the Gulf and kind of stalled almost dead over Houston. And so the way that a hurricane works is the northeastern quadrant of a hurricane. If the eye is the center, the northeastern quadrant is the wettest and worst quadrant to be in. And guess what? Houston was right there. So we had 52 inches of rain over the course of a weekend. Our normal annual rainfall came in 3.5 days. As my friend Steve, another pastor in town, says, if you ever doubted that God could flood the earth in 40 days of rain, believe me, he can, because it was absolutely astounding, the amount of water that just
52 inches,
9 trillion gallons on the Houston metro area. And it actually depressed the Earth's crust by 1.5 centimeters, according to the USGS. So, it was crazy. It was absolutely nuts. As a dad, as we're kind of gearing up for this thing, we had done the water and, food and kind of making sure all that was in play. Mostly we just kind of settled in for a couple of pretty wet days and that kind of thing, having no idea that it was going to stall out like that. And as the reports began coming in, we started thinking, okay, so what then does this look like, and what does this mean for us, not only as a family but as a church family, to re-engage and figure out, hey, how do we take steps here to love our neighbors?
So I lived in Houston for a couple of years, and my recall is it's pretty much a swamp. Like there's nowhere for the water to go. That's why there's bayous to try to get it out of there. Is that right?
Yeah, so we're coastal plain. I think where I'm sitting right now, I'm something like 17 feet or something above sea level. It's just pretty flat all the way around. And when you get that amount of water, it does run downhill, what little hill we have, but it takes a while to get there, which is, it's one of the differences between here and what happened with Helene was those mountains and hills and stuff, man, those are, they are water channels. They really send them down. So anybody or anything at the bottom of those kind of things is in pretty bad shape, as we've seen. So around here, pretty flat water, kind of went everywhere. That was the thing. One of the creeks that we have that if we were to drive down right now is maybe 60 or so feet wide, maybe 90 feet wide. It was a mile and a half wide at the time. So it has been it was a crazy time.
So, help me. The population of Houston is roughly what?
Depending upon who you ask, metropolitan Houston in the ballpark of probably 8 million, somewhere in there. I think Houston proper is about 2.5 or 3, somewhere right in there. From where I sit right now, we've got 600,000 or better within about a 15-mile radius of us.
And so were most of those people pretty significantly impacted, or would you say 50%, or what did that look like?
Yeah, so basically everybody on the map that you showed had some version of flooding in some capacity. Some were stuck in their neighborhoods. Some, as you said, had we had one that water reached their second story, so it was 11 feet high in their particular area. We had. It was a disaster of pretty epic proportions, and you just can't hardly describe all the things that go with it. And the challenges that folks are seeing on the East Coast, I think, is similar to what we experience. You lose power to a water plant, and then the water plant starts pumping sewer or distributing sewer into bayous and creeks and everything else, and all of a sudden you've got black water running where white water should be, and it's just. The dominoes are pretty bad. They just are pretty bad.
Now, as like the basic services, so you lost water, I guess. So your basic services, did you guys have cell service, or did you lose that? Or
yeah, so we actually did okay. We were under a boil water notice for a while. Our particular end of town, they had actually prepared, I think, reasonably well for some of this.
Okay.
And so even their electricity stuff stayed on for a good portion of the storm and after the fact, which was really a saving grace for a lot of that kind of what you would think is basic service, the things that you would experience in society. We had cell service. We did fine. We actually kept our internet up during the time. That was one of the things that my wife and I discussed after the fact was, we never even lost electricity. So the fact that happened allowed us to plan a response that saw people from all over the United States get to be involved in.
That's really cool. So the rain, the 52 inches are coming down. I'm guessing, like, if I'm inside my house and 52 inches, you said that's within 48 hours?
It was 3.5 days. So let's call it,
maybe 100 hours,
let's call it 80 hours or so.
80. Yeah. So with that kind of velocity, did you go outside, or did you just peer out the window, or what was that like?
Yeah. So, you're obviously watching quite a bit. One of the reasons I knew it was 52 inches exactly is because we had to manage our pool in the back. So we would drain it, and then watch it fill up again. And it was just insane. But there were moments where it would rain a lot less. Sometimes that was middle of the night. Sometimes it was middle of the day. And you'd be able to walk outside and check on your neighbors and see is everything still kind of where it should be and that kind of thing. So we definitely got out in it at times. And then as soon as it actually quit raining, jumped in my car and tried to make it to our church office, which is about 4 miles from my house, except I had to go basically 6 miles east, 4 miles north, and then another 6 miles back west in order to get there, driving through water that was up to my door on my SUV.
Yeah, I remember when we were first at the church building there, and you were giving us a description. I feel like I'm going from memory there, but there's a bayou right across from your parking lot.
Yeah, there is. Yep.
Yeah, and so then opposite of that, I thought where you head towards some strip malls and things like that, that you said that was high enough where they were using boats to ferry people back and forth across your property there.
Yeah, we launched boats from basically the street right outside of where I'm sitting right now. They weren't big boats, but they were flat bottom boats. And then we loaded up. There was a there's a church a couple of miles down the road that they got stranded. A bunch of folks got island. It became an island, and so you know, a guy named Lewis from Louisiana had a fan boat. And that airboat and I and Lewis threw a bunch of supplies on and ran it down the street. And we actually went over a car, like we could see the car underneath as we passed over. It was something, man. It was really crazy.
Like I haven't been like in the disaster, but I've been to those 3 or 4 that I mentioned pretty short time afterwards. And it's a humbling experience for a number of reasons. You have the property damage is one thing, but what I'm wondering is if you can address the psychological damage that a lot of times we help people with their finances and their worldly wealth, but in some of these things, you lose all those things, like your family photos, and so the psychological damage that happened to so many people. What was your experience with that?
Well, and Keith, it's kind of 2 roads there. One is the actual the folks who lost stuff that floated away or had to be thrown away because it was covered in toxic black mold or black water, sewer polluted water, or any number of things. That's kind of one. And again, like you said, there is financial ramifications there. There's certainly psychological, historical, relational ramifications, and all of that. Because when your wedding certificate, gets lost, well, how do you prove that you're married at that point when you have to apply for disaster relief? Well, you have to call the state. Well, the state is filling 500,000 of those, or whatever it may be. There's just those kinds of things. Again, dominoes, several clicks down the track there, but there's still dominoes that fall. So you have all of those stressors that come along with it. In addition to okay, so I'm out of work for 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks. How do we pay for this? Oh, of course we didn't have flood insurance because we were they said we didn't need it. We were in a 25,000 year floodplain. It just so happened this was a 50,000 year flood. And so, how do you reckon with the financial realities of that? And, maritally, certainly between parents and kids, when mom or dad takes on the stress, kids become an easy outlet for, de-stressing yourself. I know it's wrong, but it is part of the family realities. So you've got those kinds of things. You don't know where you're going to stay. How long should we stay here? Do we need to just go get another job and start completely over? There's just all of that. So you've got that one line of, I don't know how to say it, but just a sense of loss. And that loss can vary in degree, but nonetheless loss. The second line that was a stress that actually kind of surprised me a little bit was we found quite a few folks who struggle with survivor's guilt. And even within our church family, where they said, gosh, we lost electricity for 6 hours, or we didn't flood, or whatever. And I kind of feel bad about that. I'm looking at this person down the street or down the row from me sitting in church that did. So what do we do with that? And for the first group who experienced loss, one of the things that we try to do is just to step in and help and just say, hey, look, we're here and we're going to be here. For that second group, though, Keith, and this is, thinking about how we engage with disasters broadly, for those of us who made it through or whatever, I think the best thing is to say to yourself, first of all, to your family, second of all, and to anybody else who's in that same situation, hey, we made it through. There's a reason for that. Now, let's figure out how to help in this situation. God very well may have preserved us for this moment so that we can be helpers in that, whether it's, access to a cell phone service and internet like in our family or, something else. But hey, if you made it through and you're in good shape, what a great opportunity for you to step in and help.
Boy, that's really cool. I think it's really difficult for people to imagine that you wake up one day and the ordinary life that you had, nothing is ordinary at this moment. And the chaos that comes from that, and then where do you look? Because we've been on the ground in those places, and at Katrina in particular, as a ghost town, there weren't really many humans around. They had all fled, and I remember walking in a house where an older fellow was wiping the baseboards with bleach to help his son and his family to get back in there, and he was about ready. We literally had to carry him out to get some fresh air because he'd been in there so long. But it seems like if I'm in a city of 8 million people and everybody is distraught, that there wouldn't be any leadership for me in that situation. So like all these people in the Eastern US, and they're in these situations, they're probably feeling really isolated. And how does that even start to settle in?
Well, again, there's kind of two roads, and I will be a strong advocate for one. And while the other one has its strengths, there's a certain number of weaknesses down that one as well. So let me describe that one first. There are folks who, after any disaster, sit around and wait on federal or state resources to show up, be it FEMA or the National Guard or whomever it may be. And even some of the bigger national organizations, Red Cross, that kind of thing, they are good for who they are and what they are trying to do. And most of the time, the people on the ground are good folks trying to do good work. The bureaucracy and just the sheer size, it's the difference between turning a speedboat and a cruise liner. It just takes so long. And so let me just say, I'm grateful for the people who get on the ground as soon as they possibly can and do the good work that they do. They are limited by their just the heft of the organization. The other way that I want to advocate for is looking to local organizations, in particular local churches, who step forward and say, Jesus commanded us to love our neighbor. We take that very seriously. We don't know how this is going to happen, but we're going to trust him to provide for us as we do so, which is kind of the story of Heritage Park, is that the good people of Heritage Park just put their yes on the table and said, okay, what do we need to do here? And then how's it going to work? And the answer is we had no idea how it was going to work. What we did know is that Jesus said, love your neighbor, seemed pretty serious about that. So we wanted to take it equally seriously as well. And for anyone kind of sitting, wondering what it looks like to step forward and respond, I say start with the local small organizations of people who know who are those around, who are around them and are willing to step in and be helpful. Those are the best places to start because they've got boots on the ground, they've got the relationships, they've got the networks. They can turn their organization from one thing to another very, very quickly because they're not taking orders from somewhere up top. They really can just meet the needs of those around them. That is the one thing that I wanted to make sure and say in this conversation is small local organizations are better use of time, resources, energy, effort, prayers, all of that than the bigger organizations, in my experience.
I identify myself as a recovering type A. And when I've been on the ground and had to deal with some of those bureaucracies, maybe I had a full head of hair at first, but I remember the tornado in Henryville, in Indiana, and there was this warehouse full of supplies, and they had a storefront where people were being told you can take 10 things today and come back tomorrow. And I'm back volunteering, organizing the warehouse, and I'm like, they could take 1,000 things, and we're not going to run out, but the bureaucracy of it, just I had to leave literally. I couldn't. I'm like, these people need the stuff, and they don't need to come back multiple times if the stuff is here. And so that part has been pretty true for my experience. And I'm not a professional at it. I've experienced the blessing of going into these places and looking the suffering people in the face and helping in whatever way we can with their situation.
Yeah.
We have somebody in our church, whose family lives in Eastern Kentucky, and they're heading down to Eastern Kentucky Friday, I think. And so Connie and I are going out tonight. They sent us a list of things that could be helpful today. So that's our debate night tonight. We're the last of the romantics to go get some stuff to throw in their vehicle. But in your experience, what are the things that people need right out of the gates? Like what? Like when I've been to places, there's water. There's usually a lot of water that shows up. But are there other things that are important along with that?
I was shocked at the number of trash bags that people went through. The big lawn bags, that's a huge one. And then any sort of in our particular instance, and it sounds like based on the stuff that we've seen out of Helene, the kind of flood recovery things that is kind of twofold. One, you need cutting supplies, so razor blades, utility knives, that kind of thing, because you have to pull out sheetrock and insulation and stuff as quickly as possible. You need gloves to do so. That's a big thing. Not necessarily even a bunch of power tools, because honestly, power tools, once it starts spinning on wet sheetrock, man, it can throw nasty stuff all over the place. So just simple cutting tools to work in the environments in which you find yourself. Let's see, trash bags I mentioned, gloves, masks, because depending upon how long it's been sitting there, you may need some version of a mask, and just because it can be pretty nasty. And then depending upon where a person is working, or if it's multiple houses side by side, things like wheelbarrows and huge trash cans make it easy to throw some stuff in there, and then you take it out to whatever dump site, be it the curb or wherever, so that you can get stuff out of the house and begin trying to figure out what's left, what's still needed.
So we're probably, I'm going to ballpark 400 miles from the heart of all that. And so I don't know any local churches or people that are trustworthy in the area yet. And I assume if there are those people, that it's not going to be easy to get a hold of the pastor of that church or that local place. Is there a suggestion you have how somebody, if they really want to get, like if they want to send money and get it on the ground to go into work, how they might go about that? For all of the foibles that they have in that list, I have a list. The Southern Baptists actually do pretty well in this area. And so if somebody looks up Southern Baptist disaster relief, they can get money there. And those resources get deployed very well and very quickly. They feed people who need food. They house teams and feed those teams. So the money doesn't go as directly as it can to help. But what it does do is it gets people on the ground to help. And so that is one of the larger organizations where I think it's actually probably money well spent on that kind of thing. In terms of, again, I'm speaking as a Baptist, and so I kind of have to, I guess, speak from the experiences that I have. There are going to be people who, if you could find a local Baptist association, the Western Carolina Baptist Association or something of the like, there will be some phone number somewhere that you could get a hold of and just say, hey, who's working out there? Who's getting stuff done, and what do they need? And then we did some stuff in Lake Charles that exact same way. I called the director of that area and said, who's getting it done? He said, honestly, the big organizations have set up on the on one side of the river, and the other side of the poorer side of the river is really lacking. I said, well, give me a phone number and give me a name. And I called a good brother over there, and we've become good friends, and we still to this day visit for almost weekly. So just it takes a little sleuthing, I think, to do that. But then that's the case. If you find somebody, then the number one thing that I would tell you to tell that person is this: that resources flow to those who communicate well. And one of the things that I practiced was
I returned every text and every phone call by the end of the day. My day was not over until I had gone through every single text and every phone call that had come my way. And because we were responsive and because we were able to communicate, Keith, our little band of merry men and women here, which we're not by any stretch a large church, but we saw just about our annual budget in goods and financial offerings come through in the 18 months that followed Harvey. So
Wow.
it was insane. But
Yeah,
I think in part, looking back, it was because we communicated.
Yeah, that's really cool. I would throw out one of my disaster relief charities is Samaritan's Purse. They're literally right in the heart of that in Boone, North Carolina, and they seem to do a really nice job. It's a bigger organization, but if y'all want to check another place, you might hit them up and see what they've got going on. They tend to do international disaster relief, but it's in their backyard, so I'm sure they're involved in pretty impressive manners there.
Yeah.
Trent, man, you have exceeded my expectations. You've been really generous with your time. I smile when I think of our involvement with you because we got to come back and I think it's the last trip we've done was we came and helped clean up your church building for you. And
it was such a great gift to us, man.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun with that. And every time I see some of those pictures, I smile at some of the stuff that went on there. But we had a wonderful group of men that jumped in and helped out on that trip. But anything else you'd want to tell everybody before we part ways?
Man, I would say a couple of things just in closing. Number one, if churches are getting it done in whatever area you give to or help with or whatever, man, encourage the pastors. They need it. I know that for the first 6 weeks or so, it was 18 to 20 hour days, and it just there's no burden. Paul in 2 Corinthians talks about the burden of he goes through all the trials that he personally experienced, and he said, and then there's the burden of all the churches. Pastors feel that uniquely, and so not that other people don't have their own burdens in situations like this, but imagine carrying yours for you, and then you carry mine, and then you carry Sally's, and you carry Bobby's too. And there's just a weight. So encourage pastors in that way. Pray for them, certainly. If you can find somebody who's doing work, 100% go help. And, when you go help, I think, Keith, one of the things I really appreciated about your crew was simply like, what do y'all need done? And we had some stuff outside of the church building, and then we had some stuff inside of the church building just because it had, the wear and tear of hosting teams for months on end was pretty rough. So it is a long-term recovery process. It really is about an 18-month deal when it's all said and done. And so I go in with that kind of mindset, encourage people to have and to take on that kind of mindset, and certainly pray and go help when you can.
Trent, thanks again, my friend. And all of you that are out there, you can really up your average by just thinking about yourself. How do I want to get involved? Do I want to go to the disaster place? You've got 18 months to at least to get out there and do something, or find some place to send whatever amount you might be stirred to help those folks. And in the meantime, I hope everybody has a great day, and we'll talk to you all next time. See you.
Thanks, Keith.
You're welcome.